Good morning, Facebook and YouTube audience. This is Jennifer Noreen, and I'm here with Bryan Lehow of Osprey Accounting Services. How are you, Bryan?
I'm fantastic, Jennifer. How are you?
I'm good. Happy summer.
Good. We're close, definitely.
Yes, we are. How did you survive the tax season you just endured after COVID and all that?
Um, Still going. It's still going. It was crazy. It's a very busy season, and I'm not complaining about being busy at all. But just lots of changes, lots of updates, lots of last minute things to deal with. And speaking of which, that's probably another topic. But we just added some additional changes that they just announced these last couple of weeks. So it's yeah. So there's constant change right now, and just feels like we're constantly adjusting and moving forward. But we're catching up, and so yeah. So but thank you. Yeah, it's probably the craziest tax season I've been involved with. So yeah,
Yeah, I'm sure. So this is your
which is saying
video, and
something.
you're sorry. Go ahead.
But that's okay. Oh, I was just going to say, which is saying something because I've been involved in some pretty crazy tax seasons.
I
So
know. I
yeah,
was going to say this is not your first rodeo, so that's crazy for you to say
no,
it was a tough one. So this is your
yeah.
video, and we can if you want to give some highlights of the current changes, that's fine. Is it individual and small business, or is it just individual?
Mostly individual, and we're still kind of learning. That's kind of why I don't want to necessarily address it yet. We're still kind of learning about what the next steps are and how to address them. It's mostly around the child tax credit, but it's been big in the news and things. So, but we're still ironing out the steps and what we need to do. So yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe we can do a separate video and give people an update on that
yeah,
then. Yeah.
that
So
would be good.
today we want to talk about tax deadlines, which are in some ways a four-letter word for taxpayers for individual and small business. I know that as a small business owner, I get very busy, and you just have to have them, obviously written down and organized and in the back of your head when you're coming up on them and setting money aside to prepare for paying them. And I know they're different for both individual and small business. Some of them, do any of them cross over, or are they all pretty distinctly two different lists?
Well, there are business deadlines and individual deadlines. It's really it's I hate the response that I use it way too much, but it depends. But it
Hmm.
depends on structure. It depends on the situation. State of Washington has a lot of different things as well, as far as treating businesses in different fashions, and we'll go through that a little bit here when we talk about the different deadlines that we're working towards. So yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here.
okay.
And
Yeah, and while you're doing that, I mean, really, it's deadlines have been really interesting, especially these last couple of years. It's been craziness with COVID and
mhm.
changes coming up, and it's adjustments to deadlines and things like that. But what we're trying to work with here is just the rest of this year, and we can talk about that as we go through it too. But
Yeah. So
yeah, so yeah.
just when you think you have it figured out, COVID hits and everything shifts, right?
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
The only constant is that things are always changing, right? Yeah.
that's right. As with
Yeah.
taxes, as with life. So
That's right.
important. I'm going to go ahead and just read this little intro. Important tax dates to remember. Everyone has a yearly tax schedule. It doesn't matter if you're an employee, a small business employer, or running an S corp. At Osprey. We keep you informed. So one of the services that Bryan and his team provide is just keeping you on track. So if you're forgetting about a deadline, you'll get an email or a text, or they kind of keep you in line that way. And we have an overview of June through December on the website, on Osprey's website, and you can find this link. Just it's right in the middle of the homepage, and we can look at that link here before we wrap up. But so this is not a complete list. This is June through December only, but it's quite a bit of information. So we will be posting the rest of the year later, and we will have another go live, and we can go over the other deadlines. So, Bryan, I'll just leave it to you to kick this off. The first one listed here is June of 2021, which is this month. So, take it away.
Yeah. Yeah. And probably the biggest thing in June that hits for people is are the business owners who have to pay estimated taxes throughout the year for the upcoming year. So if they're referred to as quarterlies or estimates or various different terms, but June 15th is a big one there. The second
Hmm.
quarter estimated tax payment is due for individuals who have to pay in throughout the years who don't have withholdings or things like that that they rely on. So that's usually that's the biggest one there. I mean, some of the other ones, it's really payroll tax related. There's some various. I mean, we included quite a bit of information here on the site, but it definitely wouldn't apply to everybody. But just some various payroll tax related extensions and things like that as well. But another one I want to point out for June is that Washington businesses, that one at the bottom of your screen there, our monthly B&O tax and sales tax filers, sales and excise tax filers are required to file for the previous month on the 25th of each month. And so for June 25th, they have to file for May's activities and pay all sales tax that they collected from their customers and pay on their behalf. So that's a big one. The state of Washington kind of has different setups for. It depends on the volume of the business and the size of the business as far as when they how they set you up for the filing. So yeah.
So
Yeah,
you can
but that's
decide you can decide as a small business owner if you want to pay quarterly or monthly. Is that correct?
no, nope. They assign it for you. So yeah, it's all based on volume. And so when you form a company in the state of Washington, you usually put in an estimated sales amounts
Hmm.
for that company, and so they'll assign it based on that. And so if it's a small amount, then it'll be if you're not a huge business, then they could assign you annually. You're an annual filer, in which case the deadline is April 15th of the following year. So it really just depends on that volume, and they adjust companies throughout, usually at the end of the year. Although we have started to see them start to adjust companies mid-year, so which has been a surprise. But so yeah, so they can change you from quarterly to monthly if you're growing and growing, and hopefully that's the case. But yeah,
Yes, sure. Yeah. So monthly is a good sign
yeah,
that your business revenue is growing. Yep. So how about July?
exactly.
What's there to know about July?
There's not a lot in July, thankfully. It gives us a little
Yeah,
breather sometimes,
June
but
was busy. Yeah.
Jude's busy, absolutely. Yeah. So it's really just comes down to payroll taxes and making sure that everything's deposited correctly. And if you work with a payroll company like a Paychex or ADP or something like that, they'll handle all this for you. But just the monthly deposits, and then again, we've got that 25th rule for the monthly deposit or monthly reporting requirement for the state of Washington for July. So yeah, yeah. August gets busier though, so we can. Yeah.
So August is more
So
interesting.
this
So
year,
okay.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So this
Oh my
year,
gosh, it's like it's
um,
a lot, seven
yeah,
things. Wow.
yeah. So the Washington businesses piece of it, like I was talking about there, the quarterly filer is generally due at the end of the month following that quarter. So in this instance, July 31st just happened to fall on a weekend, and so the second quarter sales tax and excise taxes are all due on August 2nd this year. So, but it's usually the end of the month following that quarter. So that's one thing to point out there. And then um, let's see what else. Just yeah, more payroll taxes. That's a big one. The quarterly reporting for payroll taxes, 941s. All that good stuff, and then benefit plans. Not something we do a lot of, or we see a lot of, because it's generally handled by um, the administrator of that plan. Usually is the one who handles that. So 401ks and pension plans, things like that, they'll file those reports in August as well. So yeah.
So I'm noticing that there's a difference between paying taxes as a sole proprietor small business and an LLC small business. So
Mhm.
and then there's also a transition between an LLC paying contractors and an LLC paying W-2 employees. So I'm listening as your sample customer here and just noticing
Yep,
that when you do transition to W-2 employees, there are some reporting accountabilities and there's some differences in what you're
absolutely.
accountable to the IRS. So I
Yeah,
know that there's risks involved and it looks like there's also complexities with taxes as well. So good to know.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, it is. And unfortunately, I wish that was a factor in choosing between paying contractors versus employees, but it all comes down to what the work is that's being done by those individuals. So whether they should be an employee or a contractor. But again, that's a whole other conversation. So
Yes, I know it is. That would be a good broadcast to do, actually.
uh,
So,
yeah,
so in
yeah,
September, there's another big list of things. So, what are the
yes,
highlights
yeah.
here? What's the
We get
most
into our
exciting tax
corporate.
to pay?
Yeah, exactly. Highlights,
Yeah.
lowlights. But
Yeah.
really, the corporate deadline. So this is the final deadline for businesses to file. So partnerships, LLCs, LLCs with more than one member, I should say, and then
Hmm.
S corps and C corps. That's the biggest deal in September. That's our big driver for September 15th is making
Hmm.
sure that we get all those businesses filed and wrapped up. And that's a that's an annual. That's the after we filed an extension in March for those businesses, this is the final deadline for the year for the previous year's income taxes. So,
Okay.
um, so the reason it's a month before the individual deadline is so individual taxpayers can receive their K1s and things like that, which is a form that comes out of the business returns for them to report their share of their income from the companies. And so it gives that additional month, and we as tax preparers are thankful for that that
Yeah, I
we're not
bet.
all due at the
Wow.
same time.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, and then I mentioned the quarterly income tax estimated tax, excuse me, payments. That's the third quarterly is due in September. So yep.
So it might be good to color code this page eventually, so people can look at just the taxes that are relevant to them.
Yeah,
So is it the
yeah.
case that some of these deadlines, if you're an individual that owns a business, are you paying attention to both the individual and the business tax deadlines?
You have to, absolutely, because
Hmm.
there's like, especially for the state of Washington, got to make sure that we're getting everything there on time, because penalties with the Department of Revenue are not kind.
Right.
But
Not fun.
so that's a big part of it,
Hmm.
and yeah, so tracking that income levels and things really adjust the quarterly amounts essentially for the individuals and the owners that they'll have to pay in for personal taxes. So yeah, it all intermingles, and we definitely have to pay attention to the different deadlines for both businesses and individuals as we
Yeah.
go. So absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah.
And what a great reason to have a bookkeeper and a really great CPA on your team, because there's no way that I know for me, I mean, I'm very good at what I do, but I'm not very good at this. And this is your bailiwick
Yeah,
and you do it well. So it's great to have people involved that are experts at this and can keep track of this for you, keep you kind of on track, right? So
yeah.
so how about October? It's looking a little simpler. So
Yeah, October is our final, as I mentioned with the businesses. October is now the final for individuals. So that's the last chance you have to file and pay to file for the previous year. Um, Technically, payment for taxes due in April. So the IRS likes to say that it's an
oh, I
extension of
gotcha,
time
right.
to
Yes.
file, not an extension of time to pay. So yeah,
Hmm.
so but if there is a balance that's due or anything at the after the return is finalized and done, then
Hmm.
that will have to be paid as well at that point. So yeah, October 15th is a big one.
Yep.
There's no more extensions at that point. So
Right.
that is it. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And then we've got our monthly filers as well for the state. So yeah.
Hmm. So how about November?
Yeah, November again goes back to the quarterly, so the quarterly reporting, the payroll taxes. So any, let's see, 941 deposits, everything there. Beginning of November, um, that 941 is due again because October 31st is at the end of the month, or on a weekend rather. So now really that probably that top bullet point in November is a good one to highlight, because it's a great time to not only look at your own business and where you're at for the year and make adjustments as we go forward, and talk about tax planning again, whole other topic,
Yeah.
but encouraging employees to fill out a new W-4 and to adjust their own withholdings if they need to for that following year. So it's a
Hmm.
good time to revisit that and take a look um, analyze where you're at. I mean, are you getting a huge refund each year? And would you rather take home more money or would your employees rather take home more money on each paycheck rather than getting a huge chunk at the end of the year when they file their taxes and giving the government a tax-free loan? So November is a
Yep.
good time to really look at that. So yeah.
Yes, I agree. And I think that employees have a habit of setting it and forgetting it with those. That, oh, yeah, when you hired
Hmm.
me, I filled
Hmm.
out my form, but they don't realize that there's benefits to looking at it every year based on, maybe you're having children or you want to like you said, you want to hold on to more of the money than pay it to the IRS. I know I've heard some people that use this probably makes you cringe, but people that use the IRS as a savings method, they're like, oh no, I
Hmm.
don't want to change that because I want my big check at the end of the year. But they don't realize, well, it's not really the best use of where that money should
Yeah.
sit, right? So it's
Yeah.
something to look at for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Definitely. Yeah.
tax
Yeah.
tax tax
So,
return
and
checks are
from
fun,
a
but go ahead.
yeah, exactly. And from a like a business ownership standpoint, it's good practice to make sure that everything's updated, all the information's updated for your employees, whether it's um, um, address, name changes, things like that. Just making sure you have the most current information is important too. This is a good way to do that as well.
Yes, no, I would think that would all be something you'd want to check at least once a year. So, so just to
Yeah,
wrap this up, so how about the end of the year? So, what are the highlights
yeah,
there?
yeah. Not a lot of big deadlines in December. Coincidentally, but it being at the end of the year. But yeah, it's again goes back to our ordinary state of Washington monthly filers and
Hmm.
everything there. And but yeah, it's just wrapping up the end of the year is big, and I think um, the agencies all understand that businesses are very very busy at the end of the year trying to wrap everything up and get the year closed out. So I think they might have unburdened us with deadlines for that part of the year.
Yeah, and I think too,
Plus the
it's
holidays.
important that if you're going to make changes going into the new year, the time to think about it is October, November, so that you're not
Absolutely.
hitting up your CPA at the end of the year with all those changes. I just think it would be something that you'd want to discuss and figure out.
Yeah,
So good
it's
to think
important, and
earlier is better.
it's
Yeah.
important. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. And to your point, it really, when we have tax planning situations and opportunities with clients, it's important to have additional time to be able to react at the end of the year. So if we're doing
Hmm.
planning in October, yeah, we've got great data. We've got 9, 10 months of data to work from.
Hmm.
But we also have 2 or 3 months to be able to make changes and react. So yeah, it's
Hmm.
important. Earlier is better. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's easier and less expensive to someone. If you're paying a CPA for services,
Yeah,
it's easier to have the filing be proper than to go back and have to correct. So I know that I've had situations where I've had to go back and
absolutely.
correct. So it's just easier to have the better plan. So and I
Yeah,
have one small business question, and then we can wrap. But so
certainly.
is all of this and the decisions made around this for a small business, is that something that is typically included in a business plan? And if it is it something that is analyzed as far as the value of the business? So, like, is the quality of how you're managing this part of a business valuation? What's your opinion on that?
Well, I think it not directly, I think, but I definitely see where you're going with it,
Yeah.
and I mean, to me, deadlines and doing all the compliance work that needs to happen is a very important part of running a business. And if you're
Hmm.
not doing those things, then your business, you're probably not going to be running it as well as you can, and so
Right.
that would in turn affect the value of the business. Yeah, but yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it's really it's an indication, I guess, is how I would put it. It's a good indicator of
Yeah.
how successful the business is being run. So yeah, yeah, putting a
Well,
good
and no
team.
one.
I mean, you were talking about it earlier. It's having a good team around you, surrounding yourself with
Hmm.
people who are experts in what they're doing, and
Hmm.
putting a good team around yourself is really important to running a successful business. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that too, it's important as you grow to not give teams messes to inherit either. So it's always easier if you
True.
have the structure in place so that you're handing over something, especially if you're growing, to hand over something that has its act together and is easier to scale than oh man, what's this and how
Yeah,
does this set up and all of that. So, and I'm right
yeah,
there with the learning curve. That's I'm a typical person who's, I look at this as the more I get to know, the more I realize how much there is to manage. And it is significant and I think less stressful if you are in front of it, certainly. Just like any project, if you're in front of it and with a plan, than if you're behind it reacting. So I think all
absolutely.
businesses do some of that very well and some of it not very well, And
Yeah, I
so
think we all
anyway,
do, right? Exactly. Yeah,
yep, I'm an
yeah.
innovator and a
So,
creative, so I tend to be out creating and need people like
yep.
Bryan to follow and help me keep all of those things under accountability. So anyway,
There you
thanks,
go.
Bryan.
Yeah.
Thanks for the information.
No,
It's good
thank
stuff.
you.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
So if you
Absolutely.
want to if you want to find this, I guess I'll share one more time here. If you want to find this, the page that we just reviewed on Bryan's website, it is, if you're on the home page and you have an introduction section under Bryan's video, worried about tax deadlines, we have you covered. Find your tax deadline type by type on this list. So this is where it's stored. I would check it again in another 6 weeks or so. We are going to update it and add the other deadlines. And we can also do some categorizing to make it a little bit easier to digest. So I think it's good information to have on the site for sure. And it's ospreycpa.com. And if you just want to, if this has spurred some questions for you and you just want to talk to Bryan, he does offer a free initial consultation. His phone number is here at the top on the right. Or you can also email him. Is it info at Bryan? Which email do you prefer people
Yep.
contact you at?
Info at is perfect. Yep. Info at ospreycpa.com.
Super. Okay. Well, very good. Well, thanks, Bryan. It's always good to talk with you.
Yeah,
And I always learn something every time I do.
absolutely.
I'm sure your listeners do as well. We'll leave this up on Facebook. It will also be on YouTube. And if you refer to it and have additional questions, feel free to reach out to Bryan. So thanks, Bryan. We'll be talking to you again.
Appreciate it. You too. Thanks so much.